Welcome back. Rob Breakenridge with you. So you heard some of what the new Conservative leader, Andrew Scheer, had to say on with Danielle Smith earlier today. So I guess his task now is getting the party ready for 2019 and letting Canadians know where he stands. Certainly he would seem to be one of the candidates in this leadership race where it's not entirely clear. I think what we do know for sure is that Andrew Scheer is clearly no libertarian. Now, what about the guy who lost? Yes, that guy, Maxime Bernier, who very much is a libertarian, certainly a libertarian-leaning conservative. We knew that about him before he got into politics, his work at the Montreal Economic Institute. But unfortunately, as we saw during the Harper years, that Maxime Bernier had to basically, swallow that libertarianism. I think maybe that reached its peak when he was trotted out and forced to defend supply management, a policy he had long opposed. With Harper's resignation and his own entry into the leadership race, Bernier was able to be himself and to be that kind of libertarian candidate. The sort of candidate who believes the government should leave gun owners alone, leave marijuana users alone, leave same-sex couples alone, get out of people's lives, do less. Talked about privatizing Canada Post, for example, ending supply management, opening up competition in the telecom industry, and a lot more. He ran a really principled campaign, and frankly, I would say a lot of ideas I think are long overdue. But he didn't win. He established himself as a major player in the Conservative Party, but is the party obligated to listen to him? Are they going to heed any of Maxime Bernier's ideas? Because they certainly didn't, I don't think, during the Harper years. To that end, the leader of the Libertarian Party is reaching out to Maxime Bernier with kind of an interesting offer. Tim Moen is the leader of the Libertarian Party, more at libertarian.ca. Tim, good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, had Maxime Bernier won the leadership, what do you think that might have meant to your movement and your party?
Well, I think it would have been fantastic. Our goal is to advance culture towards libertarianism because, I think it's only a culture that demands liberty from its government that's going to actually create the market demand for a government to form those policies. Government, if people get elected to reflect culture, government doesn't necessarily drive culture from our perspective. So Maxime Bernier winning would have been an indication to us that that there's a large section of Canadians that are interested in these policies and pushing Canada this direction. And it would have given the Libertarian Party an opportunity to stand on the national debate stage beside Bernier and make him look like a moderate. We could have pushed harder, more philosophically pure libertarian positions the way that the parties on the left do, like the Green Party does to the NDP and the Liberals. They continually pull those parties further left, and we think we can do the same thing to the Conservative Party, pulling it closer and closer to the principles of liberty, which I think undergird Western civilization, quite frankly, and that we've largely lost.
Now, we look back at the Harper years. I think there was some progress made when it comes to respecting the rights of firearm owners, but by and large, I can't really point to a lot of libertarian causes that were advanced under the Harper government. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. And, Stephen Harper seemed like a very libertarian-friendly guy when he first started. I remember a lot of libertarians back in the in the early Harper years were getting on board that bandwagon, and the welcome for them was soon lost. And I think that the same kind of attitude is going to have to be felt by Maxime Bernier as well. Scheer's policies are just not compatible with Bernier's views, and I think that Scheer, if he is smart, I think he'll recognize that and play the political games of trying to get Maxime out. I predict that Maxime Bernier won't win his riding in Quebec next term, for example. I suspect that the Conservative machinery will have a new nominee and work with the dairy cartel to get a more Scheer-friendly candidate in that riding. So, it's a troubling prospect. But I think that right now we can put a lot of pressure on the Conservative Party and hold their feet to the fire and threaten to take a big market share, because there is this growing political market demand, I think, for principled liberty-style policies.
Well, I would like to think so. And maybe the glass half full version of what happens going forward is that the Conservatives realize that, Maxime Bernier nearly won this thing. He brought a lot of people to the party. He's got some clout that maybe it would make sense to incorporate some of what he stands for to keep those people in the party.
Yeah, I think that is a win for us, right? I mean, if the Conservative Party, in fact, if all the parties start adopting our policies, we see that as a win. Our goal is primarily to see liberty flourish in Canada, not necessarily to win a seat or to form government. We're happy with a metric of more liberty for Canadians and more liberty for our kids and our grandkids at the end of the day. And so, we're willing to trade away the short-term satisfaction of winning a seat to push ideas that maybe provoke people and confront them with their beliefs about the role of government.
Okay, so you posted a video over the weekend offering to step aside as leader should Maxime Bernier be interested in stepping in as leader. Why did you do that?
Well, I think it's an opportune time, right? This is a win-win move for us. If Maxime Bernier accepts my earnest offer, we get that continued movement that has kind of grown and supported Maxime for the past year on board with us. And we get a guy, I'm a firefighter by trade, Rob. I put wet stuff on red stuff. I run into burning buildings. I'm not necessarily that adept at playing politics and navigating those hazardous waters in Parliament. I think Maxime Bernier is very adept at that, and so I think he could potentially take this party to the next level if he were the leader, and he would have a lot of support, and the party would grow. And if he doesn't accept my offer, the party's going to grow anyways, and we will attract a big chunk of those supporters, and we'll take his platform and cut up the CPC with it, quite frankly, and hold their feet to the fire.
Right. What are some of the issues then that you feel are the most important right now? Are there issues that Maxime talked about during his campaign, or what you think, the Conservative Party needs to address?
Well, I think all of his issues kind of centered around the philosophy of liberty, right? So supply management is an issue. It's not a huge issue, but it underscores the idea of economic freedom. And why shouldn't people be able to trade freely with each other? Why should the government control and manage the economy? This idea of promoting the free market as the best way towards economic flourishing rather than towards government control of the economy. And all of his policies were kind of centered around that. And they weren't extreme policies, right? I mean, for example, he didn't talk about things that libertarians really care about, like the idea of coercive central banking and government management of the money supply. But he did skirt around those issues by bringing up supply management, by bringing up the idea of freeing trade with other countries, by bringing up his tax platform of simplifying the tax code and reducing, the level of taxation and making it more fair. These all speak to the policies that we care about, and they're policies that introduce Canadians to the ideas of liberty, and they're easy to digest and understand, and they don't smack them in the face the way that sometimes maybe our party tends to do with the way we present our ideas. So I think, they're great policies to introduce people to the philosophy of liberty.
Do you think we're making progress in that direction? I mean, take marijuana, for example. I think we're finally accepting that, not punishing consenting adults for using marijuana is a sane policy, a sensible policy. But, in other respects, Tim, it feels like we're going backwards.
I completely agree. It does feel like Western civilization is kind of at this nexus where we could go a number of directions. There are growing divisions, there are growing movements on the left and the right, and the libertarian movement is no different. We're growing, and I think some signs of progress are that the Pope made a speech identifying libertarians as dangerous. Elizabeth May made a speech recently identifying libertarians as dangerous, and so I think that that's a good sign in the sense that we're on the radar screen, that there is a sense that our movement is growing and that people are recognizing it, and that enemies to liberty are recognizing it as well. And so, there's room for hope, but I think that we have to keep our foot on the gas pedal here. I mean, we are really at a crucial stage in I think the history of Western civilization. There's, we have the migrant crisis on the horizon. We have, growing undermining of our sovereignty through all sorts of different mechanisms. One attempt was maybe the TPP, which, created these kind of extrajudicial tribunals and imposed foreign IP law and created, these kind of quasi-surveillance entities that were extrajudicial from our sovereign judicial system. And so, we see all these forces towards this kind of global governance that undermines our own local sovereignty. But at the same time, we see this growing kernel of liberty and people kind of waking up to these forces. And so it's a chaotic time. It's a time of turmoil, and I'm not sure what the future has in store. I just know that people of good conscience, people like Maxime Bernier and myself and my party, have to continue putting the pressure on and opening up people to these ideas, or it could be dark days ahead.
What about political tribalism, Tim, where you have people maybe who supported Maxime Bernier, who support a lot of his ideas, but feel as though in order to oppose Trudeau, we have to compromise on some of these points and get behind Andrew Scheer?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, if your idea for advancing our society to creating progress is to vote out the bad guys, to oppose the bad guys rather than and make compromises, then we're going to continue to get the trend line going the direction we have. And the trend line is this: you have a liberal government that dramatically grows government intrusion into our lives and spending and taxation, and then we'll get a conservative government that slows that down. But the trend never goes back the other way. We never seem to gain more economic freedom and more sovereignty over our own lives. It seems that we have continual intrusion. I mean, you could point to cannabis legalization as a possible win for liberty, but the way that's even being rolled out is that, look, you have Mark and Jody Emery facing life in prison right now for doing a peaceful act.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to happen until Justin Trudeau's regime came in, and we see this kind of crony corporatist regime that is going to dramatically restrict and control this substance and infringe liberties. So you get a little bit of liberty in one kind of narrow aspect, but you get a whole lot of red tape and bureaucracy in government along with that. So that this tribalism is a growing concern because, we are increasingly being defined by our enemy. If you are a conservative, that doesn't mean anything other than you're against liberals right now. There's no positive virtues or values that I can see emerging from conservatism. And it's becoming the same way on the left. I mean, if you're on the left, you're everyone that doesn't share your views is a Nazi or a fascist. And so, I've been called a fascist, and so that they're pushing us all. We're being pushed by this hyper-partisan tribalism into these spheres where for our own survival and protection. I mean, if you're not opening the dialogue, if you're not willing to listen and hear a different point of view and engage in a free speech kind of debate and be open to changing your mind, I don't see much hope for the future. And so we're working hard to break down those barriers and not be forced into these kind of tribal groups. And I think that, Bernier joining the Libertarian Party can go a long way to breaking down these barriers. We somewhat reject the paradigm of the left and the right. We don't see those as legitimate tribal groups to split off. And we look at everything in terms of state coercion versus freedom. And so I think that we can be, I think that Canadians can unite, whether you're come from a tradition of the left or a tradition of the right, under the banner of liberty, and recognize the value of each other. So that's my pitch to Bernier. I hope he's listening to this. I hope to talk to him here in a couple of days and continue this pitch. But if your listeners are tapped into social media, send out some encouraging tweets to Mad Max and let them know that there's an alternative here that for people that truly value his message and what he's done for our movement.
All right. Well, good luck with this. Tim, more at libertarian.ca. Thanks so much for making some time for us here today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it.
All right. That is Tim Moen. He is leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada. We got to take a break here. We're a little long in this segment, but back with more right after this.
How can your unwanted vehicle